While recent Paper Mario games have opted to almost exclusively include generic enemies you'll typically see in new Super Mario Bros. Games, the Paper Mario series used to have a ton of new and interesting foes every game. I'm not going to talk about bosses because more often than not they're one and done for a reason, but I will be going over the weird and forgotten characters from this once great series. The original Paper Mario came out in 2000 for the Nintendo 64, and while it doesn't have as many new or now forgotten enemies like ttyd or Super, there are quite a few to talk about. The first one I want to talk about are Bzzaps. I feel like every Mario game has some type of bee enemy, and Paper Mario is no different. They're mostly found around flower fields, and they're just pretty basic enemies. They only have 3 HP, which makes for a quick fight, and they just drop honey syrup and maple syrup. And now, they drop honey, which I get, but they also carry maple products? I have no idea, and you probably don't even remember that. There's nothing inherently wrong with Bzzaps, but I can see why they are forgotten. Changing course a little bit to variations of well-known characters, there are a lot of different Shy Guys subtypes in this game. Many are found in Shy Guys Toy Box, which is arguably the best chapter in the game, if I do say so myself. There's Groove Guys, Sky Guys, Anti-Guys, Spy Guys, Many Guys, Spear Guys, who do appear in Sticker Star, Stilt Guys, who aren't completely forgotten as they have been in other games since, Shy Stack, and then there's also General Guy, who is the boss of the chapter. And while they have pretty basic designs, being different forms of, guys, Shy Guys, whatever their species is called, it's things like this that just make the older Paper Mario games feel so much more creative. Some variations of Shy Guys in the newer games, but not as many and not as interesting as these ones. This still begs the question, what is under all their masks? Hurt plants are another enemy that I feel like just wouldn't be made now. They're clearly based on piranha plants, but the dev team took the time to make a different enemy to change it up. They're only found in Jade Jungle along with M-bushes. This one kind of reminds me of the one enemy in the Wooded Kingdom of Super Mario Odyssey. Crayzee Dayzees are interesting ones. They've appeared in a number of games, but have been lost since Yoshi's New Island all the way back in the big 2014. They've only ever been in Paper Mario games and Yoshi Island games, and while they've appeared in Yoshi's Island before the Paper Mario series, I thought it was just worth bringing up here along with its variations. Do you remember Gulpits? Probably not. They're only found in the Tundra region of Paper Mario 64 and are never seen again. I feel like the design just reminds me of an old school Paper Mario enemy. A more well-known enemy type are the Duplighosts. You may not know these on their own, but if you're watching this video, you probably know who Doopliss is, and yeah, you can see the resemblance. While there are a few more forgotten enemies in this game, most of them are just very slight changes to classic bad guys, but the last one I want to talk about are Embers. They appear in the original and ttyd, and remind me of those frozen guys in Super Mario Galaxy. The ones that go from being made of ice to lava. Moving on to the Thousand Year Door, there's a lot more enemy variety. As graphics improved, it became easy to make the characters more expressive, and intelligent systems took advantage. You probably know a lot more of these forgotten characters compared to its predecessor, and we're going to start with Espinia, Spunnia, and Spania, which are all brand new ttyd foes. We would later see the Spania in Super Paper Mario though, so it wasn't completely forgotten. And this is a very mysterious creature as said in the catalog, as it really doesn't bear resemblance to anything that came before it. Bristle is an enemy that bears a resemblance to a chain chomp with spikes, and interestingly enough was mentioned in Mario and Luigi Partners in Time according to the Mario Wiki, and I had no idea about that. Dexnots, or Crossnots if you pronounce it that way, are servants of Lord Grotus and remind me of the Shroobs from Partners in Time. I mean that in the sense that they are a new species that just exist in one game to be underlings of the main villains, and this is how you make common soldiers working for the enemies interesting. I'm sure every single one of you knows about these characters, so they aren't forgotten, but they haven't appeared in any new Mario game since, unless you want to count the remaster, obviously. It makes sense why, because it would be weird to have them work for someone else. I would like if in a future Paper Mario game, there's just one random X-Not chilling somewhere retired as an Easter egg. Yucks and Mini-Yucks and all their variations are characters I thought were also in Super Paper Mario, but they apparently aren't. I always just like this design for some reason, it looks funny and I just want to have them as a fidget spinner. But anyway, I was looking through the wiki page for the Yucks and I was confused why it said they were only ever in ttyd. So I went to the Super Paper Mario list and realized I wasn't crazy. The Barabad from Super Paper Mario, which I'll get to later, has the same exact face. The Yucks were created in X-Not Labs, which means one of two things for lore purposes. Either the Barabads were created by the X-Nots as well, or they based their design off the Yucks on the Barabads. What do you think? The Piter, really creative name Nintendo, is like the Scuttlebug, which has been in a lot of Mario games, including some in the Paper Mario series, but it just has the color palette of the Great Tree and the overall design is a bit different. There's also the Arantula. Nintendo has some crazy ideas while naming these two, it seems, which is stronger and has a different color palette. Bulky Babam. I always just like these massive versions of normal Mario enemies. I mean, just look, what else is there to say? The Dark Boo is like a normal Boo, but purple and with a higher HP. They would later appear in Partners in Time in Super Paper Mario, and I think this is a cool design to differentiate the Boos because for the most part they all look the same. Phantom Ember is another enemy that just has a different color palette and is just another spooky enemy. And the less forgotten enemy I want to talk about for ttyd is the Wizard. Nintendo took the word wizard and added a Z while replacing the A with an E to make it cool. I didn't even remember this one as it's only in the Pit of 100 Trials along with the Elite version, which is just a stronger version. And that's it for the 1000-Year Door, and now onto my favorite in the series, Super Paper Mario. Most of the new enemies in this game have a blocky look, which I always loved. It just gave so much character and gave Super a very distinct look. The Squiglet is one of the main new foes in this game as they're on the cover and in the first level. Just a fun design, and a few variations like the Squig, which shoots out rocks, Squogs, which shoot out rocks faster, Skoinkers, which are the most dangerous of this family unless you want to count the Dark Squiglet. Just about every enemy has a dark version, so I'm not going to talk about them for each character. But going back to the Squig family, Nintendo missed out on an opportunity to call one Squigward. Maybe they would have gotten sued over it, but come on. Spoingoings are like these slinky-like creatures that jump around, and while they only appear in this game, we did get a new character called Sproing in Super Mario Wonder, who likely did take inspiration from this peak enemy in Super. I just love all these designs, and I wish we got some sort of merch for them. The Boomboxer's power is to just shoot out sound waves and hurt Mario, which I don't know how it works, but maybe it's just really loud. There's also the Blast Boxer and Beatboxer, which are stronger and play louder music probably. Jawbus and Rawbus would be some of the scariest Mario enemies if you couldn't go into 3D, but since you can, literally all you do is just go into 3D and jump on their weak spot. It makes sense why they haven't been in another game, but these two are just two of my favorites. Turble and Ice Turble, besides being examples of peak character designs, they will both try to stun you with their attacks and really should come back in a future Mario RPG. Megabytes are one I forgot, and while they're not the most interesting enemy, you know someone was looking for an excuse to make this name. Spiky and Spiny Tromps are a member of the Thromp species who we surprisingly haven't seen since. A lot of characters in this game wouldn't work well in other Mario games, but I see no reason why Tromps haven't come back. They just roll down hills trying to crush Mario. This could work for a 2D or 3D mainline Mario game, but it just seems like they are truly forgotten. Frackles are one-off enemies just found in Fractail and use them to damage him. Unless Fractail just got magically revived, I don't expect these creatures or robots, whatever they are, to come back. The Grow-Meebas, Crow-Meebas, and Blow-Meebas are all pretty similar with just some slight differences in stats. This is actually a cool concept as they will continue to multiply until you defeat the main one. The longer it takes you to defeat them, the more it will multiply, and while the design is very obviously a Super Paper Mario blocky design, I could see something like this coming back in a future game. Schlurps. For any of you that played Super Paper Mario, you remember these guys. They are... That is, unless you play some boomer and Schlurp eats him up. Like so many other characters in this game, you can tell the developers had a lot of fun with the design of this one. The Cursias and their subspecies are another enemy group that pretty much all fans of this game vividly remember, and it's not just because they do a lot of damage or something like that, but it's because they can give you some curses that can be really annoying. You can't touch any of these enemies or else you'll get the curse, so you either need to use an item or some other way to damage them. The regular Cursia will just slow you down for a little bit, the Tech Cursia will prevent you from using skills, the Heavy Cursia will make you unable to jump, the Reversia Cursia will invert your controls, and the worst one in my opinion is the Back Cursia, who sends you all the way back to Flipside, forcing you to go through the levels again. I remember the first time this happened to me, and I was just left stunned. There were so many moments in this game where it just felt like Nintendo was just trolling the player. Remember when you do the 20 jumps in a specific order on the 3 blocks, or the entirety of level 2-3? I feel like it kind of adds to the charm of the game though, but maybe that's just me. The Koopa Striker and Tupa Striker are kind of like normal Koopa Troopas, except they will actually throw shells at you. It begs the question of where they got all these shells. They're throwing their own kind, and that's pretty dark for a Nintendo game, even Super Paper Mario. The Bitacudas are pretty random enemies that you can find in water. You typically will just switch to 3D to avoid them as they are tough to damage. The Tyloids are another enemy that I remember very vividly. They wouldn't really fit in other Mario games, but I'm glad we got them here. I like how it keeps the theme of Chapter 3, and these enemies work differently than most that just walk back and forth because they'll actually go on ceilings and walls. And this just works really well, especially in Chapter 3-3. Finishing up the Chapter 3 enemies are the Meows. They're Francis' minions, and the fact that they are all cat robots just sums up his personality perfectly. Something I really love about Super Paper Mario is how so many chapters have very themed enemies. Chapter 4 is probably the chapter that takes the most advantage of this. It takes place in space, and enemies like the Jellian, Photon, Warped, Longator, which I was just found funny, Choppa, Boing-Oing, who is a similar enemy to the Spoing-Oing, Beatboxer, who is also like another previously mentioned enemy, Hooligans and Elegons, who kind of remind me of alien Pokies where they're just made up of a few different parts, some more Tyloids, Barabad, who I talked about in the 1000-Year Door, and finally the Pigarhythm, who might just be my favorite new enemy in this game. It's a 3-headed pig that takes 3 attacks to defeat, and with each hit it gets smaller and faster. The design is just so charming, and like I said before, I wish we got merch of these figures because I would need to collect these like Pokemon cards. Let me know your favorite space enemy in the comments. While Chapter 5 doesn't have as much enemy diversity as Chapter 4, there are a couple memorable characters Nintendo has long forgotten. There's the Florosapiens and Florocragnons, which are controlled by King Crocus. You actually will lose points by damaging them, making you want to avoid hurting them at all costs. You actually later find out the Kragnons were polluting the water, leading to King Crocus becoming crazy. This is one of the few times you actually may feel bad about attacking enemies after the fact. Besides these main two species, there are also Schlorps, which are stronger Schlurps, try saying that 3 times, and Moots, which are likely based on woolly mammoths, and while very strong, all you need to do to defeat them is spam fire with Bowser, or just go around them in 3D. Chapter 6 doesn't have any traditional Mario enemies, just like the Samurais, which you fight in order to move on. They aren't bad guys, but you are just part of a challenge. There are many different variations, with some being big, small, or just having different cosmetic features. Chapter 7 is one of my favorite chapters, as it takes place in locations very different from what we usually see in the Mario universe. You start off in the underwear, which, while many people believe it's meant to represent hell, I believe it's supposed to represent a place between heaven and hell, but that's a topic for another video. There's a lot of biblical references in this chapter, including the chapter boss who is based on Lucifer. But anyway, for regular enemies, there are Gigabytes, which are stronger versions of Megabytes. Who would have thought? Underhanded, who might take the cake as the creepiest Mario enemy. You can't kill them, and they're just bony, long hands reaching out to you as you sink deeper into the lake. There are some more enemies in this area, but they're more traditional Mario foes, at least until you go to the Over There, which is meant to represent heaven. There's these blocky soldier characters who guard the area, and they're all designed similarly but have some differences. There's Skelebits, Spiky Skelebits, Skelebombers, Skelebates, and Spiky Skelebates. There are more enemies that were just made for a specific chapter, and likely will remain forgotten by Nintendo unless Super Paper Mario was re-released in some way. Chapter 8 doesn't really have many new enemies except the Magibots, which are strong ghost-like creatures. Most of the new enemies in this chapter are just variations of ones seen earlier in the game, like Gobbus, Zoing-Oings, Blastboxers, Hogarithms, Saurobads, and Longodiles. Basically just stronger, differently colored enemies. There are also Coptas, which I can't remember if they appeared earlier, and Megamoots, who have the most HP out of any regular enemy in the game, at least the ones that you can actually defeat. And that's it for Super Paper Mario, and while Super gets a lot of hate for how easy the combat is, people tend to forget how much work Nintendo did on making so many unique and excellently themed enemies. This would really be the last time in the Paper Mario series where we would have so much diversity in enemies and creativity. Sticker Star has no new enemies that aren't just slightly different versions of classic ones, same with Color Splash where they really just double down on making a bunch of Shy Guys. Origami King has even less enemy variety and just starts taking regular enemies and makes them into origami. The bosses are real world items, which is cool I guess, but in 3 sentences I was able to go over 3 whole games in the series, compared to the 7 pages worth of writing it took me to go over the first 3. It's really sad what happened to this once great series as we went from all these fun new enemies to boring, repetitive Goombas, Koopa Troopas, Shy Guys, and hopefully one day we will get a new Paper Mario game that harkens back to the creativity of old. If you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments and please subscribe as it really helps. See you next time.